We talk about domestic violence quite a lot, don't we? We have done on this show anyway. But the last and final taboo about domestic violence, about violence that happens at home, is one where there is shame, there is blame, and there is very little support. And that is the kind of domestic abuse, physical assaults that happen from child to parent. Now, here's one statistic for you. 1 in 10 women who are murdered by a man are murdered by their son. This kind of child-on-parent violence has been increasing rapidly. So what's going on? Why are we seeing children as young as 5 becoming violent towards their parents? And there's another great line here from a parent who is being abused by their children or child. When it's your child hitting you, you can't leave. So because you're the parent and you love them and you want to protect them, you don't even call the police because you don't want them to get a criminal record. You don't call social services because you don't want your other children taken away from you. So what do? This is a real problem, and it is so underreported because parents feel that they'll be told off for not, you know, or worse, have their other children taken away from them, that they're not good parents, that they can't cope somehow. There's an organisation, though, that provides guidance for parents facing violence from their children, and said the number of families asking for help had tripled over the past 3 years. So much so that another organisation in Northumberland is offering self-defence classes for parents to protect them from violent behaviour of their own children. It is not talked about, it is not exposed, and it's not discussed on any level. Government are starting to catch on to this, but they haven't even got a name for it. It's just been going on for as long as anyone can think. So has this affected you? Has it affected somebody in your family? And why do you think it's happening? That's going to be the phone in at midnight. The number you're going to need, 0344 499 1000. Well, joining me now is Michelle John, founding director of PEGS. This is the Parental Education Growth Support. Michelle, it's really good to meet you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. This has always interested me because there's a friend of mine who was very badly and over several occasions beaten up by her daughter. And she didn't want to talk to anybody about it. I said she was suffering domestic abuse, but she didn't, it was her child, etc., etc. This is so underreported. Do you have any idea how big a problem this is?
No, we don't, to be honest. There's been no national study, I suppose, really, to really understand how many families are impacted. What we know at the moment is other experts and researchers are saying around 1 in 10 families will experience this form of abuse within the UK. But that's the tip of the iceberg. They're the ones that we know about, not the people that we don't. And as you were alluding to earlier on, around sadly mothers who have been killed by their sons, you're more likely to be killed by your son than a stranger, as research that was shown from the femicide census earlier this year, which is absolutely shocking. And we know as an organisation that nearly 100% of parents reported to us that their child's behaviour started before they were 18. So we know the signs are there. We know parents are reaching out, they're just not being heard, which is horrific. And also on top of that, when you think about, you know, as a parent, you love your child unconditionally. You want them to have the help and support. What you don't want is the behaviour, for example, and you don't want people to judge you, shame you, or your child, because these children aren't demons. We're really clear about that. What they want or what families are saying that they want is to be heard, believed, and actually effective support put in place at the earliest of opportunity, rather than due to escalation.
It is though that shame, right? That any of us would feel, and the concern that other people will judge you as oh, I wouldn't let my child talk to me like that, or why is it's all of that as well wrapped up in that unfortunately the second your child is born, that parental guilt that you feel.
Definitely. And I mean, society judges us, right, when we're parents on how we give birth,
Everything.
on how we feed our child. So parents are already, criticised. We already feel shame, blame, guilt. We're judged if we go back to work. We're judged if we're not, for example. And it goes on and on. But we're not talking about typical behaviours where perhaps is seen as children just pushing boundaries, or maybe the odd swear and slamming doors. While yes, those behaviours are challenging, we are actually talking about extreme behaviours that are seen within intimate partner relationships, for example. We're talking about the physical, the emotional abuse, the coercion, control, sexual abuse too, which is one of the most shocking factors that we found as an organisation. Yet 17% of parents that we support are experiencing inappropriate, harmful, sexualised behaviours from their child, and 5% sexual abuse, including rape and attempted rapes.
Wow.
From children under the age of 16 as well. So we need to be doing more to reach into these families. But the problem is, without a definition, especially for those under the age of 16, because CPA, or child to parent abuse, is mentioned within the DA Act. We were really incredibly, privileged and honoured to be asked to consult on that piece of legislation. But when the child's under 16, there's no recognition. And because the way that the social care framework is at the moment, which is geared primarily towards safeguarding our children, which absolutely we need, we really need those professionals doing that work, we're missing an opportunity here because the parents quite often are not a risk to their child, so therefore they're missing within that assessment that professionals are going out to perhaps assess, to find out what's going on. And what we're seeing, and I know you alluded to it earlier, around an organisation promoting or providing support around self-defence classes. As an organisation, we wouldn't support that, because what we've seen is where parents have gone down that route before, and then sadly something's happened, and then the self-defence strategies or techniques have been used against the parent because perhaps a child's come to harm in some way. So it's a real difficult situation for parents at the moment, because they're trying their hardest to get their child the help and support. They're almost invisible because nobody's really particularly looking at their risks, their voice, asking them what do they need, how safe are they. And also they're trying to keep their family together, keep siblings safe, keep pets safe, and their child in question. So it's this massive circle and cycle that's going on in the UK and further afield at the moment. But particularly what we're seeing is parents' voices are just silenced.
Well, and I guess that they're just thinking, well, we should be able to manage this ourselves. We're the parents. We should be able to do this ourselves.
Definitely. All the parents that we support, and we've supported over 10,000 parents to date in the last 5 years, which is incredible. We're having such a high referral rate at the moment, which is sad, but also positive that people are finding us. But parents are, they're reaching out because the things that they've tried don't work anymore. They are honestly, we're so proud of those parents. They're better academic than any academic I've ever met. They've read everything. They've gone on all the programs. They can write them in their sleep. They want the help. They're coming to services because the things that they're trying just aren't effective for families. Typical parenting programs, one for a better phrase, just don't work for families where child to parent abuse is occurring. And also they're not the best effective method, particularly if you've got a neurodivergent child, for example. So it's finding ways for parents and families that work for them. And sometimes the only way to do that is by saying to the parent, hey, you're the expert here in your family, let me help you. But in order to help you, I need to understand what's working and what isn't working, and what does, safety look like for you.
Good to talk to you, Michelle. Thank you. Michelle John, Founding Director of PEGS, that's Parental Education Growth Support. Well, joining me now are two parents now, Creag and Louise, who have lived through this horror in their own home. It's good to have you both with me, and it's incredibly brave of you to speak out. Either one of you can start me off on this. What happened? What first led you to understand that you were in an abusive relationship with your child?
I think for me, it took a while to realise that it had become that. It started off as a really small, minor punch, and we thought, okay, this is something we can nip in the bud really quickly. We'll try and shock and awe tactic. We did call the police the first time it happened, but the response we got was not very interested. And I think that fed into, okay, this is okay, I can do this, and there's no consequence. And it just went downhill from there. And I think it took a while to start to realise that if this wasn't your child, this would be classed as domestic violence.
Exactly that. And Louise, how did you feel when, you and Creag came to this conclusion that actually this was an abusive relationship?
I think it took a long time for it to come to that realisation, longer than like you would if it was a partner, for example.
Yeah, I get that.
And you don't want to accept that is the realisation. When I did accept that, there was then the thoughts that where if this was my partner, I would have been able to have left, but because it was my child, I couldn't do that. And there's also like a guilt that comes along with that, because you're the mum and you're supposed to be the one that teaches them right from wrong. And although I've taught them right from wrong, we're obviously in this horrific position.
I mean, absolutely, I hear you completely, and the guilt that you have anyway for everything. But Louise, was it a boy or a girl that was it?
It was a boy.
A boy. So boys often are taller than their mums by the time they're about 12 or 13, especially with me, I'm 5'2". So that then becomes a very different physical relationship, doesn't it? It becomes very different. You can sanction a 7-year-old, you can probably, sanction an 8-year-old, but when they get a little bit older, that power balance shifts, particularly with mums, I would say.
I think with my son, he knew that he was stronger than I was. He would often tell me that he was stronger than I was. It was something he was actually quite fixated on. He was taller than I was. And I'm not going to argue that he was stronger than I was. I can't argue with that. But that was something that he got really excited about, almost I'm not sure excited is the right word, but it was something that was definitely prominent to him, that he knew with me. He used to say that I was weak and vulnerable, was his words. Wow. But I think that was because obviously he was taller than me. He did have that upper hand. You're right. I mean, I'm not exactly tall per se. Yeah. So he was, it doesn't take much to be taller than me, but he was taller than me.
And Creag, as the dad, again, it's a totally different feeling of a power shift, right? Because as the dad, you're going to be hopefully feeling like you're dominant to that degree over a son. How did he make you feel when he was being, this way towards Louise?
In that situation, you have no power whatsoever. There's nothing you can really do. In our particular situation, we were told to just leave him alone, let him get on with it.
What?
We have other children, and I was told to stay with them and protect them, which meant that Louise was just left on her own to deal with it. And from my point of view, you're right, you're supposed to feel like you're the one that can protect everybody, and you have to make a choice between, do I go and protect Louise and keep her safe, but potentially run the risk of him getting to the other children, or do I stay with the children and have to listen to what's going on out there and try and reassure them that Mommy's okay, she'll be all right, don't worry. It's a no-win situation.
It's a horrible situation.
And then when you get professionals telling you that you physically can't do anything, you have to stay away from him, you can't do anything, and then being told that you're doing the wrong thing for calling the police, you shouldn't be doing that. You're completely powerless. There's nothing you can do from our point of view. It was a horrible situation.
How did is this situation still going on, or have you reached a conclusion to it?
I wouldn't say we've reached a conclusion, but we're in a position now where he no longer lives with us.
Right.
We had to say that enough was enough, and after one particularly bad incident, we said that we can't have him here. It's no longer safe. And even then, after that, professionals were still trying to get us to have him back in the house, right up until the court ordered them to house him.
And again, I'm just trying to imagine that the guilt that comes with that, because this is your child. I mean, there are times when you don't like your children, right? I think that's, every parent can say that, but you always love them, all right? How was that feeling that you just thought, we cannot have this boy in the house?
It breaks my heart. It's something I still struggle with to this very day. The incident that the incident Creag spoke about then was probably the worst outburst that he'd had, and I genuinely thought that night he was going to kill me. But I still struggle with the fact that he's not here. I still feel like I've let him down almost, because I feel like there should have been more support available for him. I mean, I banged on everybody's door that I could think of, you know, metaphorically. We asked so many services for help, but it almost still feels like a failure on your part as the parent, because he's not here. And it's something that I'll still battle with a lot. I still battle with it most days, because I do miss him. I do love him still very deeply. You can't turn those feelings off. But it's obviously, I have to do what's right for everybody, myself and my other children. And unfortunately for him, I'd like to say that since not being here, he's calmed down with his behaviours. Unfortunately, that isn't the case. But I can only hope that this will open the door for him getting actual obvious support and help that he desperately really does need. And they can't blame the parents now because he's not here.
No, and you shouldn't be blamed anyway. There's far too much of that going around. But
we were, unfortunately.
Yeah, of course you were, because it's the easiest thing to do, isn't it? Just to not look at the problem, but just come up with some stupid conclusion. Do you feel like the system, Creag, enabled your son? The system actually gave him the power and the confidence to carry on getting more and more violent?
100%. He was, during his time living here, I think they said that it was 86 police call-outs, 15 arrests, and of those times, 3 went all the way to the courts. And each time he got off and was told, it's not in the public's interest, you've got to make allowances for him, you've got to give him extra chances and this and that and all the others. He was on cautions, and he still continued to commit offences while he was on these cautions, and every single time it was just, just give him the chance.
Because he was the child, if you like, and the courts are only really used to working the other way around, right? And protecting children from parents.
Yeah. And each time it made him feel like he was untouchable. It just made him worse each time, and he got it. You can see it getting progressively worse and worse. It started off with one little punch, and then for the very last time, walking out and seeing him stamp all over Louise and genuinely thinking she was dead on the floor, having to drag her by the shoulders to get her away from it. It was just each time got worse and worse.
What would your advice be to those who are listening right now, who know somebody who's going through this, or they're going through it themselves and they feel such shame and guilt that they don't want to expose what's going on in their family?
It's not your fault. There is support out there, and you can reach out for it. Social services aren't always the demons that they're made out to be. They can sometimes help, but there are other services out there that are very, very helpful, like PEGs. There are others as well. We accessed quite a few of them, and we got some help from them. But it's not your fault is the main thing, and there's no shame in reaching out for help, would be my advice.
I just want to say, it's not really my place to say it, but I'm so incredibly proud of both of you for talking to me about this and for sharing your story, because this will help. This will help, I promise you. This will help other people who are just now recognising that they are in the same position you were in. So thank you.
That's one of the things I would say to anyone who's watching this who is going through that, or even if you suspect that someone you know is going through that, is don't be afraid to ask, don't be afraid to talk. I owe some of my darkest moments to a good couple of my friends who I was able to reach out to without judgment, without the worry of, oh my God, they're going to think I'm a terrible parent. Oh my God, what am I doing? There was only a couple of people that I felt like I could do that with, but those people carried me through even on my darkest nights, and they still carry me through to this day. I'm not going to lie; it's not always easy. We still have those up and downs, but they still carry me. They still listen to me. They still care. They still show me that they're there, and they don't judge. And they might not have been through it themselves, and hopefully they'll never have to go through it themselves. But just knowing that somebody's there and you're not alone is such a big thing in a time when you feel completely isolated from the rest of the world, because it's such a taboo subject that nobody wants to speak about, and you don't really know. It's not something you ever dream of when you become a parent, that you think you're going to go through this. So I think it's finding that one or two people that you can just offload to, that will just listen and be there and just not judgmental.
I think that's the other part of it as well, is if you see something like that as a member of the public, it's not the parent's fault. Don't automatically go, oh, my kid would never have done that, or I wouldn't let mine do that. That's not the case. It's not the parent's fault.
Well, I think you're both incredible and obviously brilliant parents. So thank you so much for joining me on this topic, and we're going to try and lift the veil on it and make sure it isn't taboo and that people can talk about it. Creag and Louise, thank you.